I used to think I was the luckiest kid in the world. My family wasn't wealthy, but it was always filled with laughter, warm hugs, and evenings together brimming with happiness. Yet in just 1 year, everything crumbled like a dream turned to smoke. If someone had told me that the same father who once carried me on his shoulders under fireworks would become the man who watched me drown in loneliness without saying a word, I would have laughed in their face. But now I'm the one silenced by the truth. A truth that, if I could turn back time, I'd wish I never had to witness. My name is Hazel. I was born in Eugene, Oregon, in a small green-roofed house where summers smelled like lilac and winters were filled with the sound of my mother's piano. My dad was a quiet civil engineer who always made time for us, and my mom was the light of our family. She taught music at a nearby elementary school, hummed classical tunes while cooking, and somehow made everything feel special, even a simple pancake breakfast. When I was little, every weekend was a little adventure. Once Mom took me to a flea market, and we bought an old wooden chair, painted it lemon yellow, and placed it by the window so I could read my books there. On rainy afternoons, the three of us would gather together, Dad tinkering with vintage model cars, Mom playing something by Chopin, and me coloring in an old picture book she got at a used bookstore. I used to think, if heaven existed, it must look just like that house. Things started to change when I turned 9. Mom often complained of being tired, then started coughing nonstop. At first she said it was the weather, later, she blamed work stress. But I remember clearly the worried look on Dad's face when he made quiet phone calls at night, or the way Mom forced a smile and told me, "I'm fine, sweetie," while her hands shook so badly, she couldn't even pour a glass of water. The hospital became familiar, and the smell of antiseptic stained my memory like a permanent mark. I still remember that day. A cold March afternoon, when the doctor pulled my dad aside and whispered something that drained all the color from his face. That night, he held me for a long time. Less than a year later, my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. She left us on a quiet morning as the first snowflakes of the season began to fall. I was still in my pajamas, curled up on the sofa, frozen by the sound of the breathing machine falling silent. It felt like the whole world stopped, then shattered into a silence I couldn't escape. After the funeral, my dad turned into someone else. He still went to work on time, still ate meals, still answered when I asked him things. But there was no light left in his eyes. He didn't talk to me like he used to. No more walks with his camera, no more model cars. The whole house was wrapped in a silence I didn't know how to break. Just a few months later, he brought a woman home. Her name was Denise. Tall, curly, reddish-brown hair, heavy makeup, and a smile that looked like it was hiding something. They met at some engineering seminar in Salem. I disliked her from the moment I saw her, and I knew that feeling was justified. Because the second Dad turned his back, Denise's polite gaze toward me turned cold. In an instant. I was only 10, but I understood. This woman was not just Dad's new friend. And me, once the center of my family, started learning how to stay silent. Because silence was the only thing that didn't bother adults. But I didn't know that silence was just the beginning of a long stretch of days when I would be pushed out of my own home. I will never forget the first afternoon Denise officially moved in with us. Dad called me to the living room, his voice more excited than I'd heard since Mom passed. Denise was already seated on the couch, her hands deliberately placed on her lap, her tight purple dress clearly chosen to impress. When I walked in, she smiled. That kind of smile adults give kids when they think they're the smartest person in the room. "Hazel, from now on, Aunt Denise will be living with us. I hope you'll welcome her as family." I didn't answer. I just gave a small nod, eyes on the rug. That nod wasn't agreement. It was surrender. When Dad went into the kitchen to check on the pot roast, Denise leaned in toward me, her breath thick with sweet perfume. "Listen, kid, I'm not your enemy, as long as you know your place." I stared straight into her eyes. That look was shameless and calculating, an adult challenging a 10-year-old, with no hint of shame. After that day, Denise began her makeover of the house. All of Mom's pictures disappeared. The music box was thrown in storage. And the piano, where Mom used to play every evening, was sold to a second-hand shop without a word of warning. I reacted. I got angry. I yelled at Dad. Told him he was letting a stranger erase every trace of Mom. His response? He sighed, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "Hazel, you need to learn to accept change. Your mother isn't coming back." But Denise's manipulation didn't stop there. Every time my dad was away for work, her true colors showed. I became a thorn in her side. If I raised my voice, she claimed I was emotionally unstable. If I didn't eat what she cooked, she said I had behavioral control issues. The notes she left for my dad every night became tools to weigh down on me. And he, disturbingly, began to believe them. One evening, after I got home from school, my dad was waiting at the kitchen table with a printed sheet. It was an appointment with a psychologist. "Hazel, you need help. Aunt Denise and I both see signs of emotional trauma. You need to talk to someone professional." I froze. I wasn't traumatized because my mom died. I was traumatized because he let another woman trample over her memory and isolate me. But I couldn't say a word. I was too exhausted. The therapy sessions didn't help. They only made me feel like I was the problem, like my very existence was a glitch in the system. I told the therapist I hated Denise, that I felt pushed out of my own home. But instead of helping me, he just advised me to try adjusting and learn to share my father's love with someone new. Then one morning in June, my dad called me into the living room and said in a tone as light as if he were discussing the weather, "Hazel, Denise and I are getting married at the end of the month. But to give you a break, we signed you up for a 3-week summer camp in Bend." I was stunned. "You mean, I won't be at the wedding?" "Not exactly. But I think it's best if you have some personal time. To avoid stress." And Denise, standing behind him, smiled at me, her lips curved, her eyes gleaming with a cold triumph. Then she said, sweetly laced with poison, "We just want what's best for you, Hazel. You need a fresh start, just like your father." A fresh start? I could see clearly she just wanted me gone from the wedding photo, gone from anything that might ruin the perfect family image she was crafting. And my father? The same man who once held me during stormy nights. Agreed, by nodding. The summer camp in Bend was an ordinary place, with a lake, a campground, noisy kids and terrible food. But for me, it was exile, an emotional trash bin to be taken out before the grand celebration. I sat on the bus staring through the window, watching my dad standing next to Denise, waving as if this were just a normal goodbye. I didn't wave back. I wondered, when I return, will anything still belong to me? When the bus brought me back from camp, I carried a tiny thread of hope. That things might go back to normal, that my father would truly see me, not through the lens Denise had built. But the first thing I felt stepping into the house wasn't warmth. It was an unfamiliar chill that stole my breath. The front door opened and the afternoon light spilled into the living room. Now redecorated in a dull beige, Denise once called neutral and mature. Nothing of mine remained. The cat pillow, the little photo frame on the shelf, even the blue wool rug my mother knitted was gone. Denise appeared behind my dad, her belly now large, face made up like she was ready for TV, not to welcome her husband's child. "Hazel, welcome back. Did you enjoy your trip?" she asked, but didn't wait for an answer. Her hand rested on her belly, caressing it like it was the only thing in the house worthy of affection. My dad stepped forward and hugged me with one arm, awkwardly. "Sweetie, there's something I need to tell you. A few small changes happened while you were gone." I frowned, a sinking feeling crawling up my spine. I rushed upstairs to my room and I froze. The old wooden door had been repainted ivory white, Hanging on it was a cute little sign that read, "Nursery, Mommy's Little One," with two baby elephants snuggling. I pushed the door open. It wasn't my room anymore. It had turned into a baby paradise. With cartoon wallpaper, a white crib, a changing table stocked with diapers, pillows and formula. Everything that used to be mine, bookshelves, art sets, glow-in-the-dark star models, was gone. As if it never existed. I turned to my dad, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Where's my room?" Denise cut in, voice sweet as syrup. "Oh, we moved all your things to the cozy room behind the stairs. Don't worry, it's very warm and quiet. With the baby coming soon, we need the best space for healthy development." I walked quickly to my new room. It was actually a small storage room, once used for garden tools. A narrow bed was crammed against the wall, next to some unopened cardboard boxes, and a tiny window that let in barely a sliver of light. I turned around and glared at Denise. "You pushed me out of my own room for a baby that hasn't even been born yet?" "Hazel!" my dad snapped, his voice sharp for the first time in months. "Don't be rude, Denise is pregnant. You need to learn to share." I let out a bitter laugh, one so sour it surprised even me. Share? I had shared my dad, my home, even my place in this family. And now I was expected to share my memories, and my living space too? If Mom were still alive, she would never let this happen. The words slipped out. They hit like a slap. My dad froze, his lips tightening, while Denise looked at me like I had just stabbed her. "Your mom is gone," he mumbled. "And this is our new family. You need to learn to accept that." No one asked me what I wanted. No one cared about the pain of a child who had lost her mother and now her only safe space. All they wanted was for me to learn to accept. That night, I curled up in my cozy room, the dim yellow light shining over unopened boxes. I felt like an old item stuffed in a corner, no longer useful. Outside, I heard my dad laughing in the living room as Denise placed his hand on her belly, saying something about new beginnings. That's when I realized they didn't need me anymore. I was just a shadow in the house I once called home. And then a thought rose in me, thin but sharp as a blade. I wouldn't let them decide the rest of my life. Not again. After being pushed out of my own room, I thought I had hit rock bottom. But that was just the beginning of the years I spent living like a ghost, in the home my mother once called sacred. My baby brother, Grayson, was born on a cold autumn night. My dad called me while I was doing homework in my cozy room and simply said, "You have a baby brother now." I forced a smile, though I felt hollow inside. I visited the hospital the next day and saw a tiny red-faced infant sleeping in Denise's arms. I wanted to reach out, say hello, but before I could, Denise narrowed her eyes. "Did you wash your hands?" I nodded. "Good. But maybe next time. The baby needs rest now." "The baby?" "Not your brother. Not Hazel's little brother. Just a tiny creature that belonged solely to her." From that day on, Grayson became the center of everything. Denise controlled the entire schedule. Feeding, naps, playtime, and never let me be alone with him. When I offered to watch him so they could rest, she scoffed. "Thanks, but you're too young to know how to care for a baby. Some things are for adults, Hazel." I started tracking the time I was allowed to see my brother. 30 minutes a week, always with Denise, watching every touch I made. My dad saw it all. But he never said anything. No defense, no protest. Not a single word of encouragement. He became an extension of Denise, a man who came home, ate dinner, then disappeared behind the bedroom door, leaving me alone with homework and the sound of Grayson crying upstairs. That's how I lived through high school. On holidays, Denise always planned family trips. Family, meaning her, my dad, and Grayson. I was usually left behind with instructions to study for exams or tidy up the house. I lost count of how many times I sat in that tiny room, watching streetlights flicker through the small window, wondering what Mom would think if she knew how I was living. But eventually I found a goal: to get out. Not to run, but to free myself. My grandmother, my mom's mother, was the only person who still remembered who I was. She lived in Medford, nearly a 3-hour drive away, but called every week, sent handwritten letters, and mailed birthday money every year. During a rare visit when I was 16, she hugged me tightly and quietly handed me a thick envelope. "Your mom and I saved this since you were 3. It's your private scholarship. Don't tell anyone. When the time comes, use it to get out of that place." I gripped the envelope like it was my lifeline. From that moment, I stopped drifting. I studied relentlessly, joined every extracurricular I could, and built the best possible application for college. At 18, I received my acceptance letter from Oregon State University. When I held that letter, I didn't cry. I just felt like the shackles of an 8-year sentence had finally been unlocked. I brought the acceptance letter home and showed it to my dad. He nodded. "Wonderful, Hazel, but about tuition." "No need to worry," I cut him off. "Mom and Grandma took care of it." His face tightened for a second, but then he just nodded without another word. Denise didn't say congratulations. She only raised her eyebrows. "The college is all the way in Corvallis? That's pretty far. Surprised you're actually going." The day I left home, no one saw me off except my dad. Denise was in the kitchen, busy baking cinnamon bread. Grayson was watching cartoons. I stood at the door, holding my suitcase, the only suitcase that carried my entire life, and said one final thing. "Thanks for teaching me how to live independently. Because of that, I'll never become someone like you." I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the door, summer wind burning my face, and I knew this was the last time I would leave that house as a controlled child. I would never come back the same again. 4 years of college flew by in a blink, but each day was a battle to shed the scars of the past. I majored in visual communication at Oregon State University, juggling classes and a part-time job at a poster shop downtown. Long nights filled with cold coffee and unfinished designs hardened me into a woman who no longer trembled at criticism. After graduation, I landed a job at an advertising agency in Portland. It wasn't the most prestigious firm, but for me, it was a true door to freedom. I rented a small apartment in the Pearl District, the hardwood floors worn, but a balcony full of sunlight, and for the first time in my life, I lived in a space where every detail was chosen by me. Each morning I brewed coffee, played jazz, and sat on the couch reading the news. No criticism, no one knocking to take my spot, no heavy eyes watching my every move. I worked hard, landed a few small campaigns, and was eventually promoted to assistant creative director. I had no family nearby, but I had myself. Something I hadn't dared dream of years before. Then one Friday night, while I was revising a presentation for a new campaign, my phone rang. The screen flashed a name that stopped my heart. Dad. I hesitated a few seconds, then answered. "Hazel. It's Dad." His voice was hoarse. "I know it's been a while, but we just bought a new house. Got a good price for the old one. Denise picked out a pretty nice spot in West Lynn." I stayed silent. Well, next weekend we're throwing a housewarming party. Thought, if you're free, maybe you could come help set up?" Before I could respond, he added, his voice softer. "Grayson keeps asking about you. He's grown a lot, starting 6th grade this year." Grayson. The name sliced through every wall I had built over the years. The boy I had to leave behind, because I couldn't carve out space for myself next to him. The boy who once looked at me with eager eyes, only to be pulled away every time I got close. I took a deep breath. "Next weekend?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. "Yes, Sunday. But if you come on Saturday, even better. Help set up, arrange food, decorate a bit." I could have said no. I could have hung up and kept living in peace, never looking back. But something in his voice, maybe the stutter, maybe the fatigue, made me pause. I thought of Grayson. It wasn't his fault. "All right," I said. "I'll come." Saturday morning, I drove to West Lynn, a quiet suburb lined with newly painted houses and lawns trimmed down to the centimeter. Their home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, much bigger than the old one, with a dark gray roof and a deep red wooden door. Dad opened the door, his face surprised to see me standing there for real. "You actually came," he said, hesitant. Come in." I stepped inside. The interior was spotless, bright, so clean it felt soulless. Denise was in the kitchen, wearing a cream linen dress, stirring a sauce with a wooden spoon. "Oh, Hazel," she smiled, without a trace of warmth. "Long time no see. You doing well?" "I'm all right," I replied, keeping my eyes steady. I glanced around. No sign of Grayson. "Where's Grayson?" I asked directly. "He's at his grandparents'," Denise answered quickly. "Too noisy around here. Best he stays there a few days." I clenched my jaw. Just as I suspected, this wasn't a chance to reconnect. It was a performance, and I was the prop, dragged back to stage a picture of a perfect family. But I didn't leave. I stepped into the living room, took off my coat, and said simply, where do I start?" I wasn't helping because they needed it. I was helping to see the cracks beneath the polished surface with my own eyes. And I knew those cracks would split wide open soon enough. I stayed the entire Saturday. Cleaning, hanging curtains, arranging cups, just the way Denise instructed. She handed me a detailed checklist. From the color of the tablecloth to the exact number of wooden spoons to place beside the salad bar. I didn't complain. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because I wanted to watch. I needed to see what else they were planning. The college is all the way in Corvallis, pretty far, and yet you still managed to go. The day I left home, no one saw me off except my dad. Denise stayed in the kitchen, busy baking cinnamon bread. Grayson was watching cartoons. I stood at the door, holding my suitcase. The one suitcase that held my entire life. And said one final thing. "Thanks for teaching me how to be independent. Because of that, I'll never become someone like you." I didn't wait for a reply. I stepped out, the summer wind scorching my face, and I knew this would be the last time I left that house as a child under someone else's control. I would never come back the same. At evening, when I brought up confirming the catering order, Denise glanced at me from the sofa. "No need, Hazel. I already took care of everything. You just need to show up on time Sunday." I frowned. I clearly remembered what Dad said. Sunday party. But something about her tone didn't sit right. Back in Portland, I called Maria, my best friend from college and the owner of the popular Italian restaurant Luca's Table, where I had arranged the catering. "Hazel," Maria answered cheerfully. "Everything's ready. My team will deliver the food tomorrow like Denise requested." "Tomorrow?" I blinked. "Yeah, she called 2 days ago and changed the delivery date. I thought you knew." I shot up from my chair, my heart pounding in my chest. Taking a deep breath, I tried to stay calm. "Maria, the party is on Sunday. Not Saturday. I never made any changes." "Oh no," Maria exhaled. "Hazel, I'm so sorry. I'll cancel the delivery right away. But everything's already been paid for." "Keep it. Consider it a gift," I replied quickly. "Serve it to your customers. Just make sure nothing is delivered to that house tomorrow." I sank to the floor after hanging up. The fury rose in my throat, so sharp I had to bite my lip to keep from screaming. Denise didn't just want me to serve the event. She wanted me erased from it entirely. Cut out of the very party I had arranged the most crucial part of. Food. But I didn't cry. I was no longer the little girl shoved into the utility closet. This time, I was going to let them fall into the hole they had dug for me. That night, I curled up on my sofa, phone in hand, scrolling through social media out of habit. And then I saw it. A live stream from my cousin Sophie's account. She was at my dad's new house. The place was packed with guests, full of chatter and golden lighting. On screen was Denise, her curls bouncing, giving a tour and rambling non-stop. We just loved this home. Every detail was picked by me. Every corner has that European touch, as my husband says. A voice off camo asked, "Is Hazel not coming?" Denise paused for a split second. Then she smiled, a smile that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Hazel. Poor thing's been a little emotionally unstable. She's been avoiding crowds lately. Such a shame, right?" I went stiff. I could tolerate being excluded, but to have her drag my name through the mud? In front of family, friends, neighbors? Absolutely not. I reopened the live stream. Nearly 30 minutes later, the party's mood started shifting. Guests glanced around, whispering. Denise checked her watch, then walked straight to the front door, phone pressed tightly to her ear. The livestream audio wasn't crystal clear, but I could hear her voice rising. "Luca's table, right? Where's our order? Why is it late?" Maria's voice rang through the speaker, crisp and unmistakable. "Sorry, but that order was cancelled yesterday by the person who placed it, Hazel. There is no delivery scheduled." The room went silent. The air seemed to freeze. Denise's face twisted, her hand clenching the phone. My dad entered the frame, clearly confused. "Call Hazel now!" she practically screamed. Right then, my phone buzzed. I picked up. My father's voice came through, not soft like before. "Hazel, what did you do? You canceled the whole order? How could you?" I cut him off, my voice ice cold. "So, the party is today, not Sunday? And you didn't think it was a problem that Denise cut me out of the event I helped plan?" Silence on the other end. "I'm used to being excluded from your life. But this time at least, I wasn't going to let myself be used again." I hung up before he could say anything else. I didn't need to be at that party to expose them. They did it themselves, right in front of everyone. And that was just the beginning. I had never stayed this quiet before and done nothing. But starting tomorrow, I would begin doing the one thing they'd never expect. I stared at my phone screen, Sophie's live stream still running. Denise's face filled the frame, perfectly made up, hair curled like she was walking a red carpet instead of hosting a house party. She smiled politely at the new guests, but I could see the frantic flicker in her eyes. The expected dishes still hadn't arrived. The act started to crack when an older relative, Aunt Clara, called out from off-screen. "Hey, where's Hazel? I thought she was in charge of the food for this party." That question made the whole room freeze for a beat. Denise smiled, that kind of sweetness that reeks of deceit. "Oh, Hazel isn't feeling well. She's been having some mental health issues lately, a bit unstable. She doesn't like crowds. We're really worried and encouraging her to seek more intensive treatment." She hadn't even finished her sentence when I hit call. My dad's phone started ringing and, just as I hoped, he was holding it in his hand. His face appeared on the live stream, and I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Hazel?" His voice trembled a bit. "Put me on speaker, Dad," I said clearly, firmly. "Everyone should hear this." He fumbled for a moment, then my voice rang out through the video. "She's lying, I'm perfectly fine. And I personally paid for the catering today, until I found out she secretly changed the date to cut me out of this party." Whispers instantly broke out across the room. The camera shook a little as whoever was holding it, probably Sophie, stepped back to capture a wider view. Denise froze like she'd just been slapped, her face draining pale before turning bright red. "Hazel, don't cause a scene." My dad tried to stop me. "A scene?" I nearly laughed. "You told me the party was on Sunday. I made plans, ordered food, spent my own money, and you let your partner manipulate, lie, and publicly shame me in front of our family? And you said nothing?" No one responded. Denise snatched the phone from my dad's hand, her face tight and forced. "You're so ungrateful. After everything, you're still trying to ruin this family's special day. You need help, Hazel. Everyone here can see that." I took a deep breath. My answer cut through every facade. If anyone here has ever heard me lie, say it now. If not, look at what she just did. Excluded me, lied about mental illness, and used me like unpaid help. She calls that family? I call it manipulation. In the video, someone coughed softly. A few guests in the back started murmuring. Then Aunt Clara, the same woman who asked about me, spoke up, short and sharp. "I've always known that girl to be kind, polite, respectful, since she was little." Hearing this kind of slander, completely gut-wrenching. Polite, respectful, since she was little. Hearing this kind of slander? Unacceptable, since she was little. Hearing this kind of slander? Completely gut-wrenching. I've always known that girl to be kind, unprotected. Denise's face hardened. She opened her mouth to respond, but a man nearby jumped in. "Why say Hazel has mental problems? That girl didn't have an easy childhood. What kind of parent lets someone else smear their daughter like that?" I stayed silent, hearing every word, every syllable tearing through Denise's performance. My dad tried to salvage the moment, his voice hoarse. "A human hair is. I'm sorry." I kept my tone even. "No need to apologize. Just know this is the last time I'll be pushed out of something I helped create. And the last time you choose someone else over your own daughter." I hung up. The livestream continued for a few more minutes, capturing guests quietly putting on coats and leaving the party. Some offered quick goodbyes. Others simply shook their heads and walked out. Denise stood there like a cracked porcelain statue, and my dad watched them go, his eyes lost. I set my phone down. No smile, no sigh. Just a simple sense of relief. I didn't need to be there to prove anything, they exposed themselves. 3 days after that chaotic housewarming party, I was sitting at my usual coffee shop in Portland when my phone rang. It was Dad again. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering between accept and decline. In the end, I answered without saying anything. His voice came through, raspy and tired. "Hazel? I'm downstairs outside your place. Can I talk to you?" I looked out the window and saw the familiar pickup truck parked along the curb, and the silhouette of a man who looked much thinner than the last time I saw him. My chest tightened. Not out of pity, but from a kind of grief I couldn't quite name. A loss that had stretched on for years. I got up and opened the door. Dad stood there, holding a paper bag. The soft scent of baked pastry floated up, reminding me of Friday nights long ago, when Mom was still alive. "I brought apple pie, the kind you used to like," he said awkwardly. I stayed quiet and stepped aside to let him in. We sat down at the small dining table, the late afternoon light casting soft angles across the room. He spoke first, his voice drifting like it came from somewhere far away. "I was wrong. I've been wrong for a long time. I let a woman cloud my judgment. I let my daughter grow up alone. And I stayed silent when you needed me most." I tightened my grip around my coffee mug. "You weren't just silent. You believed her lies. You watched me struggle, and looked away like I didn't even exist." He lowered his head, tears falling without a sound. The night after the party, I listened to Denise spin excuses and lie, and suddenly, everything I'd avoided cracked open like shattered glass. I looked around, and no one believed her anymore. And I asked myself, when did I lose you? I looked at him for a long time. Not to weigh forgiveness, but to see if the man sitting in front of me was still the father I once loved. Is Denise still there? Yes. But I made it clear. If she interferes with anything between us again, it's over. I don't know what happens next. But I know I have to get this right. I leaned back in my chair and sighed. Some wounds never fully heal, but they don't have to keep bleeding forever. I won't go back to that house. I won't speak to her. But if you want to rebuild, start small. A phone call, a coffee. One day maybe Grayson. His eyes lit up, a flicker of real hope. He's been asking about you constantly. After the party, he ran to his room and typed out a message he never sent. I don't know how to fix everything, but I want to learn. I gave a small nod. Good. Then start learning. 3 months later, I met Grayson at a park near my home, without Denise. He had grown taller, his hair loosely curled, and his brown eyes lit up the moment he saw me. Hazel, he shouted, wrapping his arms around me, I missed you so much. I couldn't hold back the tears when I heard the word sister. A word I thought I'd never hear from my little brother. We ate ice cream, shared stories, and doodled chalk drawings on the sidewalk. No stepmother, no pressure, no distance. Just two siblings who had missed far too much and were learning how to reconnect. At work, I advanced steadily. The campaign I led, Start With Yourself, won an internal award. I was promoted to creative team director. New office, new coworkers. But I was still me. Hazel, the girl who once got pushed out of her bedroom, who once curled up in a utility closet, now able to choose the path of her own life. One evening, I opened the wooden box Mom left behind and found a letter she had written when I was 9 years old. Her handwriting was soft and slightly tilted. No matter what happens, you will always be the light of my life. Believe that you are strong enough to begin again, even when everything seems to fall apart. I folded the letter and set it on the table. Outside, the city glowed with lights. Inside, I felt no more space for fear. I didn't need a perfect family. I just needed to live truthfully, be loved in a healthy way, and never again allow anyone to twist my worth. Hazel's story is a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of setting personal boundaries. Though cast aside by her own family, she refused to break, and chose instead to rebuild her life from the ground up. Refusing to let the past control her, Hazel embraced conditional forgiveness, reconnected with those who truly mattered, and held firm to her self-respect. In the end, she not only succeeded in her career but also found deep inner peace, a kind of peace many spend a lifetime seeking. What are your thoughts on Hazel's journey and how she dealt with family manipulation? Share your opinions below, and don't forget to subscribe for more touching and meaningful stories about family and life.